Good afternoon. It is the 5th of June 2021. The show is Slam Dunk Basketball, where we discuss, dissect the beautiful game of basketball. My name is Felix Eupal, and this afternoon in studio, I'm joined by a seasoned basketball administrator, coach, you name it. He wears very many hats. Mr. Tom Ochumuringa, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence on Slam Dunk Basketball.
Thank you very much. Pleasure, I think, is mine.
Yeah, we are live on Facebook, on Twitter, and YouTube, here in Uganda and even in the diaspora. Tom, please introduce your various hats that you wear to the viewers out there.
I don't think I have very many hats. I am just a sports enthusiast who happens to love basketball and golf, and doing some business in developing sports, and specifically basketball.
Specifically basketball. Before we get into the topic today, we'll start with a moment of silence. The basketball fraternity this week lost someone who has been very pivotal to them, Power Basketball Team Finance Manager, Elliot Bajenda, who also is known mostly in basketball circles as Badu, passed away. And as you can see, that's an image of the late Bajenda on your screen. Moment of silence. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Tom, very sad moment for the basketball fraternity and for Power.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Losing someone is tough, and with this situation we are in, it really affects the society deep. And Bagenda Elliot was a very pivotal person in one of the clubs in Uganda. And I guess it's going to hit them hard going forward. But yeah, it's a sad moment when you lose someone who is the caliber of Bagenda. He's been in basketball for the time I knew him. That's way back. So and then he's been instrumental in quite a number of things. Yeah,
very instrumental. Mostly also in ensuring that Power Basketball Team get finances. They're ensuring that Power Basketball Team keep the sponsors, get new sponsors. So it's going to be quite a blow, and it is quite a blow to the team.
That's true.
Yeah. True. Moving on today, the topic for this particular afternoon, the dynamics in the FUBA League after all activities were suspended. The National Council of Sports issued a letter that was on the 3rd of June stating that the Federation of Uganda Basketball is not keeping up with the SOPs of the pandemic, and due to that they were calling for suspension of all basketball activities. Yesterday, the General Secretary of the Federation, Mr. Hudson Segamwenge, put out official communication notifying all teams and team managers that no activity is going to be going on concerning basketball at the moment. Speaking to Mr. Hudson Segamwenge this morning, he confirmed to Slam Dunk Basketball that they have a meeting with the National Council of Sports to iron out this particular issue and be able to reach an agreement. His argument is based on the fact that other disciplines such as rugby and football, the rugby league was able to go on and it ended. The football league is also going on. So they are wondering why the National Council of Sports has come out to halt the league. Your take, Tom?
Well, first, I don't think I'm in a position to actually pinpoint what the problem is. But where I sit, I look at it this way. One, there has to be or should have been a guideline to all federations indicating specifically how they manage this situation, COVID-19. It has to be there so that every time I'm on the administrator's point, I can check a box and say, you know what, we did not do this, and that's why we're getting this backlash. It should be there, a guideline, and this might come from, say, the National Council of Sports or Ministry of Education for that matter, which guides and that shows that someone actually went around to look at the stakeholders and what their activities are, in this case the sports federation. What are their activities? What does it entail? You look at the difference between soccer and basketball. Basketball is played in an indoor, it's specifically an indoor sport. You have to look at that. What does that mean? The president has been going on and on about enclosed spaces, we can't do X, Y, Z.
Okay.
But personally, I've not seen a guideline. It's just encouragement of follow SOPs. That, for me, sits on the fence. It's not clear to indicate that, you know what, you crossed this line here or you didn't. That's I think, a gray area in managing the whole situation from where I sit.
In my particular opinion, I believe the Federation of Uganda Basketball Association shot themselves in the foot on this. Prior to the start of the league and National Council of Sports agreeing that basketball should come back, one of the requirements was that each team would first get tested. After that, after 2 weeks, all the players would be tested. Now, for a start, the teams only tested once at the start of the league. Remember, we have gone on for quite a number of weekends, and it was only 2 games to the end of the regular season. The second was that no fans were going to be allowed in the stands, and all games were to be streamed live. The games have been streamed live. However, the 2 particular venues for the National Basketball League, Kansanga Court in KIU and the UCU courts, I have been to all of them. And the issue of restricting fans was a myth. The fans they have been watching the games properly. The issue of distancing has not been there. At first, the Vice President Marketing of the Federation, Mr. Arnold Katabi, put out a notice that only 20 accredited journalists would be allowed to cover those particular games. That has not been the case. Everyone who has shown up has been able to watch the games. So many other fans can testify to the big numbers that are there at KIU when the games are going on. And even mostly now when the Titans are playing, remember they are on their home court. The students most of them come up to cheer on their teams. So when you look at the mishaps in that, you'll find that the National Council of Sports also has a stake in the decision that they agreed to. However, it is also, in a way, double standards, because I'm a rugby fan. At Chadondo Rugby Grounds, Legends, the Makerere Graveyard, we were there at all those venues in huge numbers. So you find that discrepancy also finds the NCS in a situation whereby they're also caught up with the whole arrangement that is going on at the moment.
Well, I think it's because this is a unique situation. I mean, COVID, no one anticipated the impact that it has, and well, we just have to take it by as we move and work to get a better position for ourselves, because it is a dangerous pandemic. But that said, again, I go back to what I said earlier. You need to have a guideline which will be used to benchmark whoever it is. For example, if NCS had a guideline and the guidelines stipulated XYZ, it should not come at the later stage because of the level of this pandemic. It should not be until someone is tested positive, someone passes on. It shouldn't be at that level. It should be immediately the first game tips off, and there's one guideline which is being breached, and it is dealt with. That way, we look more organized, and we will be able to manage a league of this nature to its full fruition, to its end. Yeah? Because that is lacking, and that's strictly my opinion, because I didn't see any guideline which stipulates,
which was stipulated.
Yes, saying that if you're going to have 200 fans, that's for soccer, and there has to be a rule that will be followed. Like, Now you have 205. You're breaking this rule.
You're breaking this rule.
Yeah? That will be dealt from the beginning, and then you can have, it's like when you're employed, you have 3 warning letters. Yeah, they don't come at the end and say, you know what, you're sacked or fired.
You're terminated.
You're giving a letter and told, hey, watch out, here, there's a problem. That's how we should have managed, because it's on both sides. It affects everyone. Everyone is complaining about managing the testing you're talking about. The game is made in such a way that we have to find a method of controlling people from coming to view the game. You see, so if we laid that down, then, I mean, if you flaunt those rules, you get the whip. But now people will have an excuse and say, you know what, it was too harsh. How come X sport is not getting the same?
Yes, that was one of Mr. Segamwenge's arguments.
Yes, and that shouldn't be an argument according to where I sit. It shouldn't be an argument, because we all know why we're putting these measures. We all know. It's not like some people say COVID is not there and some people saying COVID is there. We all know that COVID is there. So if we do that, let's make sure we mask up. We know that social distancing, the SOPs have to be catered for. And if we agreed that, you know what, basketball will attract only 20 journalists, we ensure we go the mile to make sure that those 20 journalists are accounted for, so that in my report I can present and say, hey, why am I being shut down, and yet I fulfilled these.
I followed A,
exactly.
followed B, followed C.
Yeah, that's something which can create arguments on both sides. You see, from the people who are enforcing the rule and the people who are aggrieved by the rule. So it's something, a catch-22. You don't know where you're going to apportion the blame in this particular situation. Well,
the meeting is going to be taking place at a particular date next week. Which date is going to be confirmed? That's information coming in from the General Secretary of the Federation. Hopefully they reach a consensus and then can go on to see that the league can finally get done. It is slam dunk basketball. We return after this short break. Welcome to
Manchester is known as a city of invention. It's where the Industrial Revolution started.
There is a lot that motivates me, but mostly it's the people around me. The people around me. If you hurt me today, trust me, I'll write a good song about pain.
Welcome back from that short break. It is Slam Dunk Basketball Talk. My name is Felix Elpal. In studio, I'm joined by Tom Ochumuringa, sports enthusiast, basketball lover, and also someone who does various things to develop the beautiful game of basketball. Prior to the break, we're discussing the halting and suspension of the basketball league activities by the National Council of Sports. To the basketball lovers out there, unfortunately, you'll have to wait on to see which teams qualify for the playoffs, because the league is still now on what we would call a pause. But Tom, you were elaborating more about following the guidelines moving forward.
I think what also needs to happen is we have to look at the composition of who makes up the league. Because in basketball, you have the players and the coaches. When you have identified that, and that's the only reason we are having the league, then we should stick to it.
We should stick to that.
Yes, we should stick to it so that, let me put it, you have the league because we have not had a league running because of COVID.
Yes.
Yeah. If we identify why we are having it, I would sit and say we're having it because we need to have a qualifiers for the other competitions that are in continental, international. Yeah. So that we have a stakeholder saying, I'm the one representing Uganda at the club level.
Yes.
We've just come from a very big Basketball Africa League. It is amazing. It's an amazing event, and it would be good to have Uganda participate in such an event.
Definitely.
Now, if we have that kind of aspiration, we don't need to really complicate the whole event of having a league. I feel, I've not attended any game.
I haven't seen you at any
I've
of
not
the
attended any game,
venues.
and I've been someone who has been attending most games when it was not in this situation, and I have my own reasons.
Perhaps you have been watching online.
Maybe. You see, there are other avenues that, as a federation, we should be strict. Because I say we, because we are the federation. We shouldn't apportion it and say, you know, they're a particular group of people. We are the federation. As a federation, we should understand that when we are going to have the league games, it's going to be with no bums on the seats. Like, that stands should be empty. And if we do that, who's going to come up for us?
Definitely.
I mean, it will be very
There'll
hard.
be no reason
Yes, there'll be no reason.
National Council of Sports
And
to...
then also, you talked about the testing.
That happened only at the start.
So, and this people can explore and say, you know what, we don't have the capacity or the ability to emulate the bubbles in the NBA if you have. But I experienced it at the Basketball Africa League, where they were doing rapid tests. Everyone who was to enter as a fan, you had to go through a rapid test or the PCR.
Yes.
So that, I mean, people are comfortable that, you know what, the people who are in here are safe to be in here.
The limited number of people in here are
and
are
the limited,
safe.
yes. A 10,000 seater did not even take 5,000. Then you have to understand that the fans will also need that education of telling them, you know what, we are not denying you, we have this and this other channel for you to be able to experience this beautiful game of ours. If we did that, and it should be intentional on the part of the federation, be it football, be it rugby, it has to be intentional, because we have all come and agreed that, you know what, this pandemic is actually a serious thing that needs attention. The fact that we've agreed to that, we should be able to put measures, and we hold ourselves accountable. We shouldn't have the president of the country saying, you know what, you are a problem. We should be responsible enough to say, you know what, this has to be done in this particular way, and then we can have this thing running smoothly. Otherwise,
we should be able to police our own selves before we are policed.
It's very important for us to do that, because if we don't do that, then we can't even manage the sport that we are in. If we can't do that simple thing of saying, you know what, you're doing an event and you check all the boxes that, you know what, your security is intact, who are the people who get particular clearance at particular levels. If you can't do that, then it's very hard for us to confidently say that we are running a league. So I think we need to get back to the drawing board and understand that this thing requires us to put some time and attention to it for it not to escalate to the level of where we start pulling hairs and saying, you know what, you're against me. I've had
This
people
particular
saying,
sport
yes,
is going on.
We've not got there because we need to first realign our house. Then we can go out and say, you know what, there's a witch hunt.
On this particular,
Yes.
on our heads.
That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Remember to send in your views, your comments, your disses, your kisses, your remarks. We'll be able to read them as the show goes on. Prior to the suspension of the league, as someone who is in the development of basketball, the lower division leagues had their games halted because the lower league committee that runs the lower divisions could not sustain running the league due to the fact that most teams had not paid registration fees. In your view, as a sports developer, how do you think the lower division of basketball, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, should be handled?
I don't know if we have time to discuss all this thing, but I'll try and
okay.
put it in a nutshell. And this is not an attack. This is just something, an observation that I've had. Before I go out and do something for my house, I ensure that I have my rent, I have my son's school fees, I know where I will get the money to pay for electricity, water bill. It's very important, what you call a budget.
Yeah.
It's very important for me to have that in the back of my mind and strive to make sure that I get what I've told myself to get.
First, ensure that you have the resources before you start a project.
It's very, very important for you because it's most likely that it will not reach its fruition if you do not have those things. I mean, in Uganda, we're told we are the ones who have the most SMEs, but the SMEs do not see the fifth year. Why? Because someone is excited, I want to do, which is good. I want to stand on my 2 feet. But again, we don't look at what it involves for you to stand on your feet.
On your 2 feet.
Yes. So I feel, one, if I go back to the genesis, it goes to what I would call the Constitution. What does the Constitution of Uganda basketball allow us to do? That's number one.
That's number one?
Yes.
Okay.
When you come from there, then you say, what does the Constitution allow us to set up? Yeah? And the setup will have positions to say, you know what, this setup is going to be run like this, and the other way. Where we are is we're really half-baking stuff.
Okay.
This is my opinion again. We are half-baking stuff such that if you are excited, I carry your excitement and I run with it.
I use that to my advantage.
I'm running with your excitement. I am not analyzing your excitement. Yeah. So we have this situation where there's a lower league, and the lower league will run, and it is comfortable to run only when they have the finances to do so. Then that means we are doing voluntary work.
One of the arguments is that the lower division does not have a sponsor, unlike the National Basketball League.
I beg to differ. There is, if we have come to do basketball, I'm one of those few people who will tell you confidently that we should not be crying about government support. It is important. It's very important. But I usually am very quiet about it, saying that we will complain when the government does not help the national team, when the sponsors will not come and support the sport, because of one reason. We have to make ourselves sellable.
We have to show our value.
We have to, for example, our basketball competitive level is not to where it's supposed to be.
Okay.
When we get our level...
What is the reason as to why the level of competition
there are
is
very
not?
many. There are very many aspects from when do these people start, when do our players start playing? They start very late. What do we do with them when they start? Are we focusing on basics? Or there's a time I had an argument with my colleagues in the office, and I was telling them what we should do, and I was shot down. What we should do is, let's not focus on the national team going for competitions.
Okay.
Let's create a duration and say we will achieve what these people are having in the next 10 years. Let's get a 10-year-old and work with those 10-year-olds for 10 years, and by the time they are 20, we will see our work and the results.
The fruit of the building
what we are
process.
doing currently is we're picking Felix, Tom, and saying, hey, you know what, you're the best now, yeah? And when we go out there, we come back and we're saying we need to learn because those people are better than us. We've said that like for the longest time. Why don't we reevaluate our processes and say, is our process right? Are we following the right process to achieve what we want to achieve? Yeah, and I hope someone somewhere is doing it currently, because it needs for us to come back and say honestly, you know what, this is not working. We have to change it. That's why I come back to the divisions. The players, we don't have competition, although what we have now is what I will go and watch. And when I go and watch, I'll say, oh, there was a nice move, and here there was a dunk here, and that's where, yes, that's right. And yet, our basketball needs to showcase skill at a very high level, which we should be now. Yeah, Federation started in 1994. Yeah,
true. Yes.
We're just going in a circle. We have Steve Omon, Norman Blick, they're still playing.
Yes,
let's try and go back 94. Jordan was in the NBA. Is he playing now?
No,
there have been a number of players who have come and replaced him, not because he cannot play, because he cannot compete.
At that particular level.
Yes, he cannot compete. You just saw what Lakers
they struggled.
He couldn't. He's 36. He can't. Younger players will definitely outrun you. They will outjump you. So we have to think that way for us to make this product, which is so beautiful, sellable. When it's sellable, when you have the supermarkets in Uganda, they don't call for anyone. They open it and make it glamorous, and you go there, you're like, oh, the aisles are full. You tell me if you go to a supermarket and you find the aisle is not
some
loaded.
section which is blank.
When you have that, you'll be like, I'm not going to that supermarket again. But these supermarkets really take time to make themselves sellable. And that's how we have to be. We have to turn our thinking into making basketball commercial. Basketball has to be commercial. This business of I'm a volunteer, let's leave that to the United Nations.
For the passion.
Yes, let's leave that to the United Nations if we want. If we want government to put us on a microscope and say, you know what, these guys are worth this. If we don't do this to them, we are the ones
actually going to be missing out.
Yes, and we will get a backlash. That's what is happening with soccer in Uganda. Soccer in Uganda is not giving us what we're craving for, but because they've made themselves sellable here, with whatever direction they've taken, they have a very big funding from the International Federation,
from FIFA.
Given, they have so many things.
They take the biggest chunk of the sports budget.
All that. But what they've done is they made themselves sellable. Someone wants to buy them. We in basketball, I inclusive, we have still not got that right formula to make ourselves sellable so that we can actually sit in the table of men and share that feast.
And be able to share our views and our wants.
Yes.
You talked about fundamentals. Watching Basketball Africa League and the way the ball was being shared, even from Zamalek, the eventual champions, they didn't lose any game. But you would see that the ball rotation on almost every offense, at least 4 players are touching the game. So is it on our side here as a country and as a federation, is it a lack in the skill set of the coaches? Or
Yeah, as I said earlier, it cuts the course. Look, if I'm an administrator of a team, yeah, and I'm cutting contracts, and I do not fulfill my contracts, yeah, it will affect the player.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I am a coach and I do not hone my skills to reach to the international level and actually impart it, there's having a certificate or a qualification and being able to impart it.
Impart it onto the
players, so that you can see the players are actually being nurtured into the skill level they should be at. There is that. Then there is, of course, the officiating. Officiating goes hand in hand to show you the level of basketball in the country. So, referees, our refs, do not have any training.
Prior to the start of the season, they had one referees clinic.
Let me just give you.
My memory serves me right. It was a 2-day clinic.
Let me give you an example. Look, basketball players, train minimum 3 days in a week. This is Ugandan setting.
Yes.
We throw 2 hours in that training session. So they clubs feel comfortable having players doing 6 hours a week. Yeah. And they try very much, because of the level of competition that we have, to use those 6 hours to give the players the skill they require to compete.
To compete at that level.
Okay.
The clubs will also argue that most of our players have jobs and can only be there
Fair enough.
Between 5 or 4 p.m.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Where I'm directing my argument or my discussion is this. Players who are going to play have put in 6 hours of practice. The ref has done one clinic, yeah? No practice, nothing whatsoever. Comes on the game day, and when he or she is given the whistle, that's where his practice,
that is his
and
practice.
his or her skill is being tested. You're definitely going to have...
It is the practice and exam at the same time.
It's definitely going to have a disparity. And that's what, because if the referees, there are some referees who have been reffing, if I mention names, Chitio, I remember when I used to play, Chitio would, people call him Presido. He would be at the pool court, and he would be officiating when we are training or when we are playing. So you see, he has that practice, and people today can tell you, I would prefer Presida with all his flaws. I would prefer him reffing because
over another, over
because
different ref.
He has that empathy. He can see the effort you're putting in when you're going for a layup and you are bumped, and that calls for a foul. He has practiced it. During the week when you guys were practicing your trade, he was practicing his.
He was honing his skill.
So we don't have that. That is a big element in the development, because you find when you go for international competition, the referees are honing their skills to the level where you, the player, you have to adjust to their officiating when you're in a competition, which is really takes us back. So those are 3 areas I've mentioned which actually affect the development of basketball. And then lastly, what are we doing with our young players?
With the young upcoming players.
Yes. What are we doing? Today our focus as Uganda should be soccer. We've left it to, as a setup of Uganda, nursery schools are not considered important. They are there, but they're not considered important.
In terms of sports development.
In terms of education, not only sports development, in terms of education, you find nursery schools, I can open a nursery school and I just find my way and get a clearance, a license, and I run the school. Yeah, it can be in a very squashed place, but it's a nursery school, it's business for me. But we have not analyzed what year 0 to 7, for a child means for us to be able to get citizens like us here who will make decisions, know the building blocks that we have been given when we were young. Because sports is just part of our life.
It is.
We have to know what is a child 0 to 7 doing in this particular sport. From 7 to 14, how do we deal with them?
How do we develop their mind,
exactly, for
their
us,
bodies?
True. For us to be able to confidently own the space and say, you know what, we have done for this sport for it to give us
to be able to give us back and be able to benefit from it.
Exactly. So that's something which maybe needs a wider discussion, because I'm maybe poking at a very big bear. But we need to get down and say, as basketball, what are we doing at that level to make sure that 5 years from now, we have athletes who we have followed and we know critically that their capabilities are X, Y, Z.
Going down still to development and also leadership in terms of basketball and sport. I'll still use the example of Power basketball team. Just recently, they fired the old coaching staff because the first time in their history, they had got 6 games beaten in a row. So the decision by management was Coach Arnold Lando, who is known as Muchuda, plus his assisting team, are shown the exit, and we bring in a new head coach. As in terms of leadership, was that a smart move or a wrong move?
Depends on where the forces are coming from. Because, look, if I'm the president of Power,
one of the key forces, according to their social media page, was the coach was the problem. Because remember, prior to the season, they shipped off about 80% of the entire team and totally brought on a new team. Again, in fact, they remained with only 2 players on the old team, Isaac Afidra and Chikiri. They were the only players that remained. The other cast is totally new.
Again, I say it's the force. Where is the force coming from? Let me expound on that. If I'm the president of Power and I have a force in a sponsor, sponsor is saying, why are you not performing? Why are we, this is unlike us. I have to look for a place.
Well, Betway gave them 200 million at the start of the season.
And that could be a force. Because very few teams...
Biggest sports sponsorship actually in,
very few teams,
in basketball history.
Very few teams have that kind of portfolio. And if that's the case, there has to be, heads must roll. Then there's also an element of what was the strategy between the club and the people who are financing them. Because in as much as I give you money, I have to understand what the strategy you're using. Because if you're going to do away with the whole team, and what you're putting in place is not as strong as what would be on paper, already that strategy is flawed.
The strategy is not going to work.
That strategy is flawed. You should be going in and saying, you know what, all stakeholders of this club, let us rebuild. Those are the words you should be using. Rebuild. And if it's rebuilding, then you should expect 6-game losses. Because
you are in a new
started
process
afresh. You will take anything that comes because your eye is focused on a particular goal. If that's the case, then they shouldn't be heads rolling. It should be, okay, this is expected and we're going to deal with it this way and this way. Coach, you have to either you go train the coach more, or there's so many avenues you can take to make sure you position yourself. But that again involves the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders in that club? So that you don't have people throwing stones in a glass house. It's delicate as it is, and you need to understand that, hey, you know what? We're trying to put a glass house, and this glass house will be delicate because of X, Y, Z. Fans, this is what you should expect. Just be, and you move on with it, because I don't think that was done to really look at the club and say, you know what? We're doing away with everyone, or maybe it was market forces.
It could have been the market forces, but also the fan base, because we very well know that Power has a very huge fan base.
When you say a very huge, and I'm sorry to direct this question to you. When you say a huge fan base, what do you mean?
A huge fan base in terms of the fans that actually come to support, the enthusiasts of the team, former players, who also actually have a say on which decisions are made by management.
So between
they do have a say.
Yes, they're stakeholders. They're big stakeholders.
A very big say.
Fans actually are the ones who drive this sport to where it is. Yeah. Without fans, it's really
actually one of their former coaches and former managers, former president, is the one that started the whole campaign with the hashtag "the coach must go," and then it kept on building and building, comments. Then to fuel it more, what would have been like throwing gasoline onto fire is 3 losses. 1, 2, 3. The 4th one comes. The 5th one comes. He said this is unacceptable in Power history.
But what was the strategy? You know? And then to take you back, when you say you have a fan base, does Power know how many people they have as fans? Do they actually
the actual number? I don't know if they do.
If you don't know that, you and I can create pseudo accounts and be fans.
Yeah.
And we push whatever our agenda is. So there are so many things, and these are administrative level where you make decisions basing on actual tangible elements. Power losing 6, to me
in a row,
to me means nothing if they know they are rebuilding. Because look, what will Falcons say?
Falcons
they were relegated.
They're also in the same. They're also in the same boat.
But before they were relegated, what? Then they should fire the manager. Everyone should go. It's the important thing for me is why are we rebuilding? Or are we rebuilding? If we're rebuilding, you'll expect the results that you're getting, because you can't have young players at this level of competition, the top competition in Uganda, and you are expecting a miracle, and yet you in your mind, your strategy is we're trying to reorganize ourselves because maybe we do not have the manpower that competitors have. We have to be realistic about that.
And I have it on very good record. I'll not, of course, mention names, but there's a section of fans who actually came up and said they will bring in new players and pay them themselves from their pockets to ensure that their team wins. Is that something that should be acceptable when it comes to team structuring?
Now, exactly. The word is how is the team structured? If your finances are the fans, then you have to dance to their tune. But that again has so many problems because the fans are working on sentiments and not reason. So it's very dangerous for you to have a setup where the fan is the person who calls the shots for the team, because they will not be reasoning with you. They will use sentiments to get the result or get a favorable position for themselves.
Because at the end of the day, the fan wants to see a W.
A win, yes.
Yeah, they want to say W.
So it's very hard for you to work your objective or goals if your structure is set up that way.
Well, so far at the moment, they believe they made the right move because finally they were able to get their first win against Falcons. Although very interesting game, it went on to overtime, 3-point game at the end of the final whistle. So they believe the new coach that they brought in is the man that is going to save the sinking ship, because at the moment they are a sinking ship, and the league is winding down. They only have 2 more games to play. So for them to survive, they need those 2 wins.
Survive staying in the league. Survive
relegation.
Yes.
At the start of the league, there was I'll call it an agreement that there would be no relegation. Reason being, Warriors Basketball Club pulled out, and so did Sharing. They opted out of this league for different reasons. Yes, but now that rule was that I would say that relegation was overruled, and now we're going to have 2 bottom teams
coming up
get relegated. The bottom 2 of the 10 on the log get relegated. Then the top 2 from
the lower division
get promoted automatically. Now the 2 which are relegated play in a playoff game with the other 2. Now that would be the relegated teams plus Warriors and Sharing playing in a one-off tournament to decide who now finally gets dropped, which has also brought up quite a lot of contention between the basketball managers. What is your take on that?
Well, you remember in the beginning I told you rules and regulations, constitution, those are very vital tools that we have to work with. If this was discussed before, then it should be followed. If it's not followed, you will have echoes everywhere. Yeah. To take you back to the power element of them winning and versus that being the solution of, I call that band-aid.
Band-aid.
Band-aid. It's just putting.
Oh, you're just
trying to
covering a wound.
Yes, and which they have a reason. They have a reason because they want to stay in contention in their league. It's fine. They can do that, but that can't be the solution for their problem. That the strategy they had was this, and now they're seeing the strategy doesn't reflect well on them, and they have to change. You can't solve that problem.
You're shifting goalposts.
It's very hard. But regarding the change of elevation and relegation, I mean, I don't know if what you're saying is correct, but
it is correct, and also approved by Hudson Segamwenge,
I mean that's
the FUBA General Secretary.
Yeah, that's usually something which you're not giving the competition the right roadmap for it to be a competition. Because if today I tell you, you know what, if you score 2 goals, you automatically qualify, and you go and work your butt out,
and then you score
2 goals, and then you're told, you know what, we might need to add one more goal for you to. It's really tough for the competition element to actually be there. Yeah. So if that's the situation, it kind of kills the element of competition, because all I need to do is just raise my hand and say, hey, you know what, I can't stop it, but it's not fair for me. Yeah, that you have changed from 2 goals to 3, and yet I worked myself hard and I made the 2 goals. So it's something which I think people need to sit and understand that that's not the way you do competition.
It is the 5th of June 2021. My name is Felix Opal. We're discussing the various dynamics in the game of basketball. We'll return after this short break.
Please, someone tell.
Manchester is known as a city of invention. It's where the Industrial Revolution started.
There is a lot that motivates me, but mostly it's the people around me. The people around me. If you hurt me today, trust me, I'll write a good song about pain.
Welcome back to the final segment of Slam Dunk Basketball Talk. Felix Opal is my name. In studio, I'm with Tom Ochumuringa. We've been having quite a very fruitful discussion. Tom, as we wind up, City Oil is still leading the league. It's still very dominant. 8 games, 8 wins. It seems the chasing pack cannot stop them from getting an 8th title in a row, what should teams do to actually be able to dethrone City Oil?
In 2012, at the AGM of FUBA, my colleagues and I presented a paper to the AGM, indicating the minimum requirements of a basketball team in Uganda. And they had all the facets that City Oil is using to get the achievement they have. It is very hard for any other team if they don't. 15 things that
15 requirements.
15 requirements that I don't want to go through. They were presented. If you don't have them, it's very hard for you to compete. Yeah. That being said, City Oil might lack some of them, but they're on the right path. And then their eyes are not on Uganda prize. Their focus is way beyond
is way
beyond the trophy of Uganda
beyond
and the
NBL.
bragging right, because no one can come and tell them anything about Ugandan basketball.
Of course, 7 years in a row.
What are we talking about? There's nothing there. You can come and sit with them and start arguing about competition in Uganda. But they have eyes elsewhere. And that being a fact, there are very few teams that will patch themselves up if they do not have the kind of administrative acumen, structure, objectives, and the goals they require to compete against City Oil. Very few teams.
Prior to the start of the season, Namungo Blazers was elevated to the NBL, and they went on a shopping spree. In fact, they had a very interesting hashtag, FUBA Brooklyn Nets. They were the version of Brooklyn Nets because they had shopped what they believed were the top cream players in the local league. The league has gone on, and unfortunately, the excitement that the fans had of Namungo Blazers actually being able to poke at the 7-time champion, that morale has gone down with the losses that they have. Played 7, lost 4. Well, that doesn't really look like a team that is going to be able to punch up against a team like City Oil. As an administrator, would it be a right move to go and pick new, I wouldn't say new, but assemble an arsenal without it knowing itself? Because every player mostly came from a different team, and they just put them there together, and they handed Steven Nyeko, the head coach, say, make those boys win.
It's hard. It's a tall order. Look, if you want to achieve success, if we go with what our forefathers have taught us, there is no shortcut.
No shortcut to success.
There's absolutely no shortcut. That's something very important we should have in mind. There are teams, though, which have, I call it patching up the team. You patch up a team, you have a solid team, you go out and you win trophies.
And you win a trophy.
Yes, there are teams which have done that. But that shouldn't be a team's strategy.
It's not sustainable, in other words.
It's not sustainable. It's a gamble. You're gambling. Okay, it's going to work. And we also now have to discuss the intentions of doing such things. Because today, maybe some teams say, you know what, I was thinking about it yesterday when we were talking about this show. I was saying someone can quickly say, like Tom can quickly say, you know what, let me get the best 10, 12 players, put them together, call them Tom FC, Tom basketball team. We go play the league, and when we win, we go to BAL. BAL is a different monster.
It's a different ballgame.
BAL is a different monster. The lowest team gets, from what I deduced from the tournament, the lowest team, or every team gets $70,000. And this is, here's $70,000, prep the team, prep the team to come and play, come and play at the Basketball Africa League. If that's the case, I'm cutting my losses very quickly. Form the team, spend $35,000, go to Bal, get my 70, and if I'm competing, I get to the top 8 or top 4. I still have a cash prize that
you still have a big balance.
No, not the balance. You even get more money because the top 4 was, number 4 was getting, I think, if 25,000. Number 3 is getting 50. Number 2nd is getting 75. The top one is getting $150,000. That money is good for business.
Definitely.
Yeah. So if that is my strategy, go with the patch up. Patch the team up together. When you're going to Bal, get 2, 3 foreign players, put them in the team, go win the Bal, and it makes business sense. But it is very, very hard, for you to do that and beat Zamalek.
Definitely, it has to be
it's
a process.
Very hard, because when you talk about Zamalek today, when I walked into the gym and I was watching the game, I didn't know Zamalek was actually in contention of the. I was looking at Monastir from Tunisia.
The team from Tunisia.
Yes, they displayed amazing basketball. You're looking at
Patriots were also
Patriots. I wrote even in my book. What Patriots did was amazing.
Down joke, very cool.
I mean, that's PR to me, which is very good PR, amazing PR for that setup of the sports industry in Rwanda. It's amazing. The thing is, you find Angola should have been in that bracket of number 1, 2. You see, but they didn't. So it's very hard for you to come and destabilize a product or a program, for that matter, which has been there 20, 25 years.
Plus.
And they have improved that product. They've worked towards improving it. It's very hard for you to come, you and I form a team, we're going to play against Zamalek and we expect to win. It's we are trying to chew a very big chunk, and yet this is the size of our mouth.
And yet we can't be able to handle it.
It's very hard.
It's the 5th of June. The show has been Slam Dunk Basketball Talk. We have been discussing various items concerning the game of basketball. We'll wait for the meeting with FUBA and National Council of Sports, which will happen later next week, to decide whether the league will be back on. As per now, the league is suspended. Tom, thank you so much for gracing us with your time. And thank you for sharing with the viewers the wonderful views and intelligence about the game of basketball.
Thank you.
We'll catch up next Saturday. Have a blessed afternoon.